Building in a Small Town, where we're talking to entrepreneurs, community leaders, policymakers, and more to find out how they're building things in small towns. I'm your host, Shelby Smith. Building in a Small Town podcast. I am joined today by a fellow farmers market vendor. I think that's where we first crossed paths. I am joined by Aaron Johnson of Joygrow, based out of Cambridge. So thank you for being here today and sitting down to chat.
You're welcome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I usually start with everybody. Did you grow up in Cambridge? Did you grow up in a small town?
No. Definitely did grow up in a small town though. So Gilbert, not too far away, familiar with it? Yeah. So lived there more or less my whole life and moved to Ames for a couple of years. Lived in Boone for too many years. And then moved to sleepy little Cambridge. I love it.
Okay.
It's a great little town.
Yeah. So when you graduated from high school in Gilbert, then did you go to college?
I did.
Okay.
Iowa State.
And what did you major in?
Biology. So a science, life nerd, it fascinates me how things work and why things happen, and science helps kind of rationalize and put your thumb on some of those answers. But yeah, I'd say it's that. And
do you remember, a lot of times it's your first exposure to it is in school. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when you first were fascinated by science? Was it like a particularly good teacher? Were you just like that kid that was picking up all the bugs in the backyard even before school? Do you remember where that kind of spark for that came from?
Well, yeah, my dad, he did take me out hunting, fishing, and I always had an appreciation for nature and fascination. I can't walk through the woods without stopping and looking at every damn thing. Yeah, easily distracted. Just the wonders of life, There's so many things to learn, and that's what's always fascinated me. I forgot where we're going with that.
Well, so where was your first? Where do you remember? Was there a particular moment of being fascinated with science things? What led you down the science path?
Yeah, nature. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I don't know if I do.
That's okay. It's one of those things that it can happen very naturally. What sparks your interest,
right.
And then it just captures you.
I like to say that I have a keystone moment. Aha! I like this, but no, I don't think it was like that. I think it was a little more organic.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It just kind of is what it is. And I just didn't know if there was maybe a really cool elementary school teacher or something that.
I did have some good biology teachers.
Yeah.
And I guess when I did start going to school too, I went to DMAC because it was more affordable, and then transferred to Iowa State, and I just got a bachelor's. And it's very generalistic, and so I guess I would say that's where I maybe might have narrowed down my love of science was at DMAC. I tend to lean towards more of those classes like physics. It fascinates me. I hate the math, but it fascinates me. Chemistry and stuff like that. Take the math out of it and it's great.
So you definitely were not of the math then, shall we say?
2 + 2 is 4.
That's as far as you need to go. Yeah, you're walking around with a calculator in your pocket, so what's it matter, right?
Yeah, right? Definitely.
No, I actually had a really, really good high school. Well, so he was my AP chemistry teacher in high school. And he always used to joke that biology is chemistry, chemistry is physics, and physics is math. So,
They're all, yes, definitely intertwined. Intertwined.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you go to DMAC and that's a, like you said, very affordable way to get your gen eds out of the way,
Right.
dip into college and see if you really like it and want to pursue it without going into,
especially when you're paying for it all yourself.
Yeah, without mountains of debt sort of a thing. I think that's
I'm still there. That won't go away.
Sometimes it's fine, maybe one day. But so then when you decided to narrow it down and go to Iowa State and pursue biology, did you have an end goal, end career in mind at that point?
I wish. There again, I had this conversation with my son. Life takes you down crazy paths, and the sooner that you can maybe have some kind of recollection of what kind of path you want to take, it might be better. So we've had that conversation, but I was lost. I had no idea. And I probably should have done internships and things like that. I was just trying to get good grades, get through school, and get a job in some kind of entry-level tech position, and that's what I did. And it was miserable. I hated it, every second of it.
Okay, so entry-level tech position in what, are you talking technology or lab tech?
Labs, I did some lab tech stuff. I worked for a protein purification company and was taking samples and working with lyophilizers and just really basic kind of monkey lab tech stuff. But fascinating, but also just soul stealing.
And what about it was the soul stealing? Was it just because it was so repetitive and or what?
Those entry level jobs, they expect a lot as far as hour wise, and just
don't necessarily compensate you accordingly.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. So I was working poor. Literally, I couldn't afford a pair of new shoes, and now I've got to a place in life where I'm a little more comfortable. By no means financially rich, but I'm a lot more comfortable than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And it's a good feeling. It really is.
Yeah. So that first that first tech job that you get into, how long did you stay there?
I've pretty much stayed at every place I've worked at. I'm not a fly-by-night guy. I was 2.5 years, and it was weekend overnights.
Wow.
Let that sink in. 12-hour shifts, 12 on, 12 off, and then I'd tried to convert and be a day walker and hang out with people, and now I live in the real world, and the circadian rhythm is real, and it was so unhealthy. It was, again, miserable.
Yeah.
So the hours, and then the type of work, and again, what you expected to do, and it just kind of felt like just a glorified, janitor or something for a job, which is, God bless janitors. But I just didn't feel like I was doing my full potential.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about working that night shift. When did you sleep? So you were 12 on, 12 off. When did your shift start?
7 o'clock in the evening.
Okay, until 7 a.m.
7 yep.
And then you would go home and...
There'd be some times where, I would, treat it like a Friday night or whatever. I'd go and buy a 6-pack of beer at 7 o'clock, and people were like, what the hell's wrong with that guy? But no, it was just, I would go home, probably watch some TV, eat some food, hang out, and then sleep.
And then start it all over.
And it started all over, and it was a grind. Talk about a grind. Now, sometimes I bellyache about that, about my current position and having to work, and then I look back oh shit, I got it pretty good.
Yeah, it could be.
Relative.
Yeah, you could be going back
perspective is everything.
For sure. Okay, so then you stay there for about 2.5 years, and then what?
On to another job, another soul-stealing job, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do at all, and ended up actually working there for another 2 years, overtime, almost mandatory every week. I'd work 60 hours that week. As I'm walking on a Friday, they're like, hey, come here a second. We don't need you here anymore. I was like, what? I just had my second kid, second and final, and anybody tells you you lost your job, it's gonna be life changing, especially when you aren't expecting like that.
Right.
And there wasn't really a good reason again at the time. I wasn't even really given a good reason, and did go through workers' compensation, and was awarded it for a while I looked for a job. So yeah, it was a nightmare. But that was actually the aha moment when I converted to Joygrow.
Okay.
I was done with that shit. I was done with it.
Done with the soul destroying. You were done with working for somebody else. So was that second position, was that a science based, like were you doing the science that you loved so much, or
not
this was
really.
not it? Okay.
Nope, just earning a paycheck really.
What were you doing?
Working at a nutrition blend plant.
Okay.
Yeah. Like dumping bags and
Yeah.
just, it's gross. It was just earning a paycheck, man.
Right.
And there again, after I started up this business, I did it very organically, and wasn't doing it full time at the beginning. I started this in 2015, so that's what, 8 years, almost 9 years, yeah. So, I again, by the skin of my teeth, just making it. I quit that job, like I said. Well, I got fired from that fucking job.
Yeah.
Said enough of this, and I did what everybody does: goes to the internet and researches. Right? How can I make $1 million fast?
Tomorrow,
right? Right. So, basically, I stumbled on mushrooms, and I looked at all sorts of stuff. And there again, the science of me was fascinated with. I had already been brewing beer, so I make the joke that I switched from a microfungi to a macrofungi. And there's tons of similarities. There really is. Just trying to make a happy home for those little fungi.
Yeah. And so speaking of the beer brewing, what led you down that path?
My buddy.
Yeah.
Happy birthday! He sent me a kettle, and he moved to the West Coast, and there's a huge brew scene out there, and a bunch of dirty hippies.
And so you decided, I'll give
this. This is a whirl. He gave me all the ingredients and everything, and I like beer.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 10 years, again, before I started Joygrow. And so I think that definitely also did help, because when you're homebrewing too, there's a lot of just kind of learning as you go. And you can read books and you can go over all this stuff, but there's a lot of mistakes that need to be made first.
Like what? Like give me an example. What's one you remember? What's a big one you remember in the beginning, or a small one?
Well, screw brewing. I mean, let's talk about Joygrow. Mistakes that were made. Oh goodness. I mean, silly ones like buying equipment and stuff like that. It's just unnecessary purchases when you begin.
Like larger than you needed, or like you thought it was going to solve a problem and it didn't, or
I think mostly he's going to solve a problem and it didn't.
Okay.
God, I can remember the days again. When I started that, it was so rudimentary. I never started it as a hobby, so it's always been from day one as a business.
Okay, you weren't even dabbling.
I've never grown a mushroom in my life.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had the homebrew thing, and you're like, all right, this is one form of
shit. Let's roll. Yeah.
You were dead set. And were you looking at doing the side business because you for sure just did not want to? You did not want to have the same feeling of just on Friday them being like, all right, peace, or were you doing it because you guys really needed a side income at the time?
It was both.
Okay.
It was absolutely both. It was survival, and I wanted to do something that was a little bit more sustainable and fulfilling. And the work that I do now is that. There's so many different paths that I can go down with this.
Had you ever farmed anything in your, because you are technically a mushroom farmer.
Nope. I mean, generationally, my grandfather was a farmer, and it ended there. I knew nothing about growing. My dad had a garden, but I didn't help or anything. So no, I had never had a crop in my life that I had to tend over. Again, like I said, when I went on the internet search, I was just spitballing, and I always liked mushrooms. They have fascinated me. I like to eat mushrooms. I like to eat. So it seemed like a good fit. And and there again, you know, just like with your business, there's no college to start a cricket farm.
No.
There's, you know, there's not. There's, and the industry is still somewhat in its infancy as far as cultivators, but now there is a wealth of information out there.
So that was going to be my next question for you then. So like when you started this in 2015, like what were I mean, YouTube had been started back in 2007, whatever, but YouTube of 2015 is not what YouTube of 2024 is in terms of like the breadth and depth of the information there. So I got to imagine that your searches for information were possibly not as fruitful as they would be in today's era.
100% correct. But there again, you would have to go on like the Shroom Ring and, you know, and Roger Rabbit. Everybody who knows how to grow cubanus and psychedelic mushrooms knows what I'm talking about. Like, because back in the day, that was the information out there. I had no intentions of ever growing any kind of illicit mushrooms, but a lot of the practices and ideas of it are applicable to gourmet mushrooms.
The basics are the basics.
Yes.
No matter. Okay,
yes.
So.
Yes. I mean, yeah, the basics are the basics.
All right. So you're going to the dark webs essentially to get your information.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few other people out there that had some, but most of the videos were lacking. And there again, right now, there's a wealth of information, and there's farmers that are happy to help, and that's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Because now, by doing this for 8 years, I'm the de facto professional now in the area.
Right.
And so on a daily, weekly basis, it's emails and questions. Hey, I want to start up a farm 10 minutes away from you.
Yeah.
Fuck me.
Yes.
Damn it.
Yeah. No, I trust me, I get that. I've not been around since 2015, but I've been around since 2018, and in cricket farm years, like that's pretty old at this point. And so, in many ways, I am the de facto expert for almost the entire country at this point of raising them for human consumption, and it just is what it is. And I attempt to share as much knowledge as possible.
Yes, and that's a good thing. Well,
and for me, you know, it's one of those things like mushrooms are not a new food that you're necessarily introducing to someone. There's a lot of education that goes into yours for sure, but like mine, the supply chain isn't there. And somebody else starting up a farm 10 minutes away, first of all, I wish them luck and say,
right.
welcome.
And that's essentially what I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It is. There's a lot of barriers to entry. And I mean, capital, time, knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's not something for the faint of heart just to jump in. It's a job just like anything else.
But so take me back to 2015 then. You're scouring the corners of the internet to find the basics of mushrooms. And then like what are your first steps? Like where do you get spores from? Like where do you get because that's
no sex is involved. It's so sad. Nope. It's all asexual reproduction. I'm working from clones.
Okay.
So
for the non-science people listening,
sure.
Explain that. Like I said spores, which that would be
sexual reproduction. Yes.
Versus you're working with clones. Can you like explain that a little bit for people?
Definitely. So spores are the way that they would naturally reproduce in the wild and germinate, and that's basically you're getting crosses of DNA. You know, you're getting different actual organisms when they're breeding. So when you're basically more or less taking a tissue sample and put it onto a nutrient-rich like agar plate, I can grow that tissue out and just keep on growing that tissue out and expanding that. So what the benefit of that would be is that you know what you're dealing with. When you're breeding, you don't know necessarily the next generation, what the yield potential, phenotypes, all that. So there's a lot that goes into it, and I want reliable spawn every single time. Plus, it's just a really reliable, fast way of expanding culture too. Yeah. So it's just, that is the way things are done.
I did not realize that mushrooms were that way. A lot of people
They're nuts.
That's Cool.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize, like, apples are the same. So, like, when somebody develops a variety of an apple, if you want to, like, let's say somebody develops one out in Washington and you want to, let's assume that the variety grows here in Iowa. If you want that variety, you have to take a cutting of that tree. Sure. You can't, like, cross two of the same variety tree. It's going to have the same thing where you're going to...
You have to take a graft of that and
Correct.
You have to put it on some other rootstock.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
So, but here's the thing with mushrooms though, is like they can't really protect their genetic material because any asshole can go to a grocery store and really take a tissue sample and propagate that. Now, it's not necessarily the best method of, good, lively genetics. But yeah, I mean, you can. You could go to the grocery store
and just lop one off and throw it on.
It's a little more complicated than that, but yes, more or less, that is it, yes.
Okay, so then in that case, where did you get your first tissue samples that you were going to then propagate?
Yeah, there again, hopping on the internet. Oh shit, I bought some really cheap seeds off of eBay. Mushroom seeds, that's a joke. Everybody in the know, they probably bought like similar crap off of eBay. So basically it was just a pack of mushroom mycelium and it was very affordable and I expanded it and it was all like green. It was shit. I then moved on to just different random vendors on eBay. Etsy really wasn't too much of a thing at the time. I did reach out. Actually, my very first culture I grew was from Fungi Perfecti, from Paul Statement's company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. He's the rock star.
I was going to say, I know that name.
Douchebag. But, yeah, man. Crazy thing. Backpedaling. Like 20 plus years ago, I was working in a call center making random like cold calls, trying to sell shit that people didn't want. And one of the places I called was Fungi Perfecti. Uh-huh. And I started having some random like mushroom conversation. I said, screw it, I don't care if Q&A's and listen, I'm just gonna like talk. And I gave them my address and I had them send me their catalog. So maybe that was a little seed too that like kind of planted. Because I remember looking at that catalog and reading it and being fascinated.
Yeah. Interesting. That's a full circle moment for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so then when you're buying these tissue samples or cultures or whatever you want to call them, are they dry? Like I think of you see dried mushrooms on the shelf at the grocery store, things like that. Can you rehydrate them and propagate them?
Two-part question. Crazy thing is yes. Now I haven't personally tried it, but I know there's an individual online that does do that and can take dried samples and actually propagate them. Problem being is that you're going to run into possible contaminants and things like that, and it's harder to work with and get a clean sample. But there's different ways around that also. That's a whole nother ball of wax. Second part of that question.
So when you were getting them shipped, were they like,
what
was it?
Yeah, and then the moisture content. So no, I'm not getting anything dried, anything like that. It's like a same moisture content as a mushroom, so probably 80%, or no, it's not that much moist. But anyway, it is wet.
And
it is grain spawn is what I use.
Yeah. Are they shipped to you like on dry ice? Do you have to keep them cold? Like how?
Nope. So yes. So what I'm expanding is all my cultures with is what's called grain spawn. So take nutrient dense packets like grain seeds, rye in the industry is very common, and they will sterilize that, hydrate it, sterilize it, and then add a culture onto that. Basically giving it, again, a very nice nutrient-rich environment to grow out on. Then I take that spawn, which I used to propagate and expand, and I cut the middleman out and me, and I'm bringing spawn in the farm now, because it is, if you know that you want to produce a weekly crop and you're like counting on that, you need good starting product. So, and I've just saved myself so much time and heartache just trying to produce my own spawn now. So that is how I bring in cultures to my farm. Work with one particular company out of Wisconsin, Field and Forest. a really great company. But I've worked with plenty of other vendors in the past.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, possibly a dumb question, but I just, as you were talking and said that and talking about the medium with it growing on, if it's rye or what are other common grains? You have rye, you have
Rye, millet, milo, some sorghum, same thing.
yeah.
Oats.
Okay. If the mushroom is growing on the rye, gluten free? Like
So yeah, no, that's a great question too. I mean, for some particular people who are really say that they're gluten intolerant, there's other spawn that you can use like millet, and that's why a lot of lion's manes that I'm buying now comes on millet because of the gluten thing. Now, my personal thought on that is that that's not being carried over to final product.
Yeah, and that's where I don't think that's necessarily how that works, but
the science on it, I think I might have looked it up at some time, but if I wasn't so lazy, I might get into it. No, my professional thought on it is that it's not carried over to final product.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not ever.
But that question's definitely come up.
Yeah, and it's not something that I'd ever be like, oh, are these mushrooms gluten free? But I don't know. It's one of those things. If it's growing on that medium.
Right. If you had extreme like celiac disease or something, I would say maybe stay away from it. You know, I don't want anybody getting sick. I want to take care of my customers. I care about them.
But it's just an interesting thought experiment, shall we say. Okay, so you get these cultures in, you grow your first flush of mushrooms. What was it?
It was a white oyster mushroom.
Okay. How basic of
pearl oyster mushroom. But they were gorgeous. I still remember when it first started to fruit, like waking up at 3:34 in the morning, driving in the dark because my grow operation wasn't on site, and like, yeah, with this shitty little camera, like flashlight, like looking at it, like, oh my god, it's like almost ready.
Yeah. And
like 4 in the morning.
Did you? It's fine. It was your baby
was.
coming to fruition, kind
right?
of thing. Okay, so did you decide on the white pearl oyster mushrooms because that was the easiest culture for you to get, or was that like you just thought that was where the market demand was because you just see a lot of them?
There again, in my research, I was considering ease of cultivation, marketability, and that was a good one that was always kept on popping up as oyster mushrooms, and that's still a good portion of what I do grow. But I quickly learned and heard from my customers too, we want variety. Where are the other mushrooms? And I still get, the other mushroom question. Bring 9 freaking types of mushrooms to market and this ain't the right one.
Yeah, and the one person last week that told you they wanted this specific one, which you grew for them, does not show up. I know how that
I want XYZ. I will be here next week. I will bring it for you. They don't show up.
Yeah, exactly. And they just sit there. Trust me, I can.
But I've also been like, yeah, I'll bring it for you next week, buddy, and forget. So.
I suppose the coin does flip both ways, sort of a thing. But, okay, so you grow these first ones. Did you sell those first ones? Or did you eat them?
You know what? I wish I could tell you exactly. I'm pretty sure that I may have taken a very small sample, but again, I never started this as a hobby.
Yeah. Like
from the get-go, I wanted to make $1 off them. I'm pretty sure I probably sold them. And if you ask me who my first sale was, it was probably some random person. Like, hey, you want to buy some mushrooms?
Yeah.
You know?
So then how were you advertising at that point? 2015, I mean, Facebook was a thing, but Facebook wasn't necessarily advertised.
No, I didn't even have, it was like 2 years into when I started before I even made a Facebook page. I can be kind of impulsive.
You don't strike me as
so again, like I said, I wanted to start something with this business that was unique, that I could build on, and that I saw potential in. And derailed completely.
You're fine. Like how you got the word out initially.
Oh yeah.
What'd you do to advertise?
Lots of just word of mouth,
Yeah.
mostly. I never had a good plan and good really of how I wanted to take it. Now, I mean, it's a little more solidified now, but at the time, no, it was just like calling people. I remember texting, like, and I was still working other jobs.
Right.
So I was actually college graduated, up on like a roof, tearing asphalt shingles off and putting new ones on, and siding and framing, and that's how I like started this thing really. And I'm so glad. I've learned so much.
Yeah.
I can do way more things than I ever could before. Like, so like learn a trade, and that's what I talked to my son about too. Like you don't have to necessarily go to school. You can find a trade, and you can be very satisfied in what you do and earn a very good living.
And oftentimes, depending on the trade that you're going into, if it requires trade school, like actual formal education,
right?
There's a lot of these big companies that will pay for that education. You might have to stay there for 2 or 3 years after, sort of thing.
Indentured servitude.
Yeah,
right.
But they paid for your school.
But they paid for your school,
and
right.
you're also you need those 2 or 3 years of experience, because hypothetically speaking, you're going to be working.
Nobody wants someone super green too, and that was my issue coming right out of college too. It was like I got no experience because I can't get a job. I can't get a job because I got no experience. So you take these whatever entry level jobs just to
get some experience, so then you can hopefully get the other ones, and then by that point your path is so far out of the way that it just doesn't matter. Okay, so the other thing, what conditions do you grow mushrooms in? I mean, crickets thrive in a very particular environment. I was thinking about that.
I was thinking about that on the way over here. So don't your crickets like it hot?
87.
Yeah.
87 on.
So like summertime is like your jam. You have.
It's great. It's free heat. Yeah, free heat, good ventilation, all of the things.
And do you air condition some?
So I don't. I have found. So I used to be really. I used to be really concerned about high heat days and things like that, because there's definitely
you get some kills.
Well, because there's definitely some upper limits in terms of like what crickets can withstand. And then the other thing that people don't necessarily realize is you start packing them in there at like 10,000 and a 4 square foot
They're
sort of a
generating
situation.
a lot of metabolic heat.
The amount of friction heat that is coming off of them is...
Well, it's metabolic heat too, because guess what?
Right.
My incubation, I don't have heat on them right now, just from colonizing blocks.
You don't need it.
It's amazing the amount of, like, I will touch the sides of these like just growing grow bags, and they are warm to the touch.
That's wild.
So they're more animal-like than they are plant-like.
So similar situation, yes. With the crickets, they'll generate their own heat sort of situation. But I found as long as I keep the ventilation going, and so the air quality, so you're getting the ammonia and everything out, they tend to do just fine in the Iowa heat, even when it's
you just need
100 plus.
Good airflow.
Yes, and so that's where in the winter, the way my current barn is structured, you can't do any.
Do you have like a preconditioning air room?
The next iteration of a cricket barn would have that. Yeah. So the way this one's set up, you can't do it. It doesn't make sense. And so the winter months are a little lean, shall we say, in terms of cricket harvest.
Everybody is like, "Oh man, you must love the summertime." I'm like, fuck summer.
Yeah.
Give me the winter time.
Okay, so
I want the cold, because mushrooms, like the mushrooms that I grow in particular, and a lot of mushrooms really could thrive in like a temperate rainforest. So 55, 87% relative humidity with some dry out periods.
Would be great for them. That's ideal.
Yep. So not wet all the time, but
you're keeping your grow room then average.
Yeah, like this time of year, like 55, and I can play around with it. So I kind of shot myself in the foot. I wanted to take a little mini vacation. Went to Kansas City weekend or the other weekend, and so I can turn down the temperature and just slow my crop down. But I turned it down too far, so it's affected me for the last I'm starting to pull out of it now, but it is a constant just tuning the knob.
Yeah. So how far was too far? Is 40 too low?
I went to 48.
Okay. So
normally I keep it at 55.
So they're real tight in their range that they like real tight.
Relatively, yeah. So in the summertime, I can't really keep it colder than 60. I just can't. But that's what I mean. That's what I try to. I mean, without freezing up all of my compressors. And yeah, so excuse me, 60 is about as cold as I can get in the summertime. And so in the wintertime, there's less inputs, I'm paying less in utilities, and
Yeah.
it's just crazy in the summer sometimes. And my crop suffers and doesn't look as pretty, and they're growing slower in the winter, and they have more brilliant color and denser. Just
And it also coincides with the winter being not market season, where you don't always have.
Right. Yeah, and I have to do a lot of shuffling. I call it the September scaries. So that knows that market season's ending. I gotta find a home for these weekend mushrooms, and so I pivot and I make do. Try to pick up more restaurant accounts, go through other different venues, direct sales. So just about anybody can get to buy mushrooms. But I mean, I'm at the point now where I definitely need to grow more mushrooms.
Yeah. Well,
It's a good thing.
it's a good thing, but I always say it's a good thing, but it adds its own additional stress.
Yes, it does.
There's capital investment implications. There's labor implications. There's lots of.
That's a biggie.
Yeah. So there's a lot of those things. Okay, so you started with these beautiful little pearl mushrooms.
Yeah.
What was the second one you decided to give a go?
Second mushroom
Do you
I
know?
ever, probably lion's mane, perhaps.
Okay.
Some lion's mane.
And what led you down that path? Because, around then, like, lion's mane was starting to get a lot of hype.
Yeah, I think it was just from seeing what other growers were growing.
Yeah.
So I probably just oysters, lion's mane, then I brought on like some king trumpets or the king oysters you might find like an Asian grocery store, and then the pyopini and chestnut, and I had a coral tooth from a wild tissue sample that I had grown, and it was a gorgeous culture. And then derecho happened, and I had no energy for a week, and I lost all of my cultures. And it was shortly after that too. It was like, I'm just gonna bring spawn in. It's just too much.
Yeah. So when did you start getting into? When did you decide like farmers market was a good path?
That was always from the very beginning too. I'm pretty sure as soon as I was producing, because I started growing in late 2015, and I was selling at that 2016 market.
Okay. And did you start in Ames?
Yep. Very first market was in Ames.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then you've watched that market kind of evolve then.
Yeah, it only been, I think, a couple years old when I started. I don't know the year they started.
I'm not sure
2012,
when
13,
they moved
something
it
like that,
to
maybe.
Main Street. I always remember the North Grand one.
They're actually competing markets.
I know. But I always remember, like, I don't remember the Main Street one, maybe in 2013 when I came back from college.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Like the first year is 2012, 2013, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
It's not that old.
No, it's
like
not
10
been
years or
around that
something.
long. But okay, so you start your first farmer's market. How was that first season?
Oh gosh, scary. But also, I also look back. So I'm keeping like a log of like sales and what I was happy with then. I would be like,
Devastated.
fuck this. I'm never going to that market ever again. This ain't worth my time. That's bullshit. People suck.
Yeah.
I would be probably not the happiest mushroom grower. But, yeah, man, it's all perspective. Everything's relative.
Right, and as time progresses and your business progresses, there are things that it is good to look back though and remember, kind of what it was like. So when you first started, did you have 2 or 3 varieties that you were bringing in the beginning?
So there again, my growing methods also were pretty rudimentary. I was chopping up like straw in a trash can with a freaking weed eater. And then that upgraded to like a little mulching machine, which still made you like, love life because it's so dusty, so dirty. And then I would pasteurize that straw and in coolers. And if I was driving, I saw like abandoned coolers or free coolers. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm gonna grow some mushrooms that thing. So yes, I had a cooler army with straw and grew in really long plastic logs. And if you're super space inefficient, you're kind of limited on what you can grow. That substrate is great to grow on, but not very nutritious. And so I made this conversion. Oh, it's been maybe about 2-3 years into it, where I started growing grow blocks, and that's more or less industry standard now.
Yeah.
They're basically these 9 to 10 pound blocks that are stackable. You can rack them up on carts. It's much more manageable. It's uniform.
What are they made of?
Some kind of polyethylene that is autoclavable, so you can tolerate really high heat without just melting.
Okay, polyethylene being?
Some kind of like fancy plastic polymer.
Okay.
And it can tolerate heat.
What was the other big word that you used?
Discombobulate?
No. No, you said polyethylene that can and...
Oh, autoclave.
Yeah.
Autoclave. So autoclave is basically a tool that used to sterilize your media.
Okay, and you do that with heat?
With heat, yes. And that is the golden standard, is to use heat for sterilization.
What temperature and time?
So actually it depends on what you're doing.
Okay.
Like as far as like with agar, 20-30 minutes, because you don't want to burn that. And with spawn, there again depends on the size. So I made a mistake of making like a double large bags back in the day. I remember, oh man, I can run this spawn and didn't increase my cook time. So as you increase mass, you have to increase cook time, and just producing really, really bad green spawn. And so again, teachable moments like that, that just happen.
Yeah, and it comes with experience, and it comes with experimenting and everything else. There's one thing you mentioned there, that the straw substrate didn't have a lot of nutrition. What do mushrooms need from a nutrition standpoint to grow and thrive? And are different varieties different?
Yeah, so there again, I might be a little foggy, but I know that they all are producing these type of enzymes, hydrolytic enzymes, basically that will break down cellulose and lignins and other organic matter and actually produce it into food, which is mind-blowing. So I can take agricultural waste like straw. I considered corn stoves a lot too, because we're in the middle of Iowa. There's literally corn stoves everywhere, and that being said, I could grow mushrooms on just about any kind of like agricultural waste like that. The fact that I went down this path with my growing substrate now is wood-based, supplemented with soybean hulls.
Okay.
And I can change that recipe up a little bit, but that's more or less what I grow all of my mushrooms on.
And do you source that from somewhere, or are you making the blocks yourself?
I am. So I'm making all the blocks. I'm sourcing all the raw ingredients, all the bags and everything.
Right.
But yes, my operation is a fruiting operation. So again, I'm bringing spawn in and growing those bags out, bringing to the fruiting room, and then out the door.
So what do you use to make the blocks? Like, is there a...
There again too, when I started, there was no equipment for any of this. There's no people like holding your hands how to do it. So I still remember switching from, that gross straw and that nightmare to these bags that I was running kettles on my stove and then mixing them in my living room. And gosh, things have changed. So now I'm cooking it on a very large kettle. Basically, it's 150 gallons. I could cook.
Dang.
Yeah, I've made the joke when I have like guys helping me unload. Like, there's this one time my belt fell in, and like, you could cook a human person in this, like an entire adult male in here. So no, I'm using a method what's called ultra pasteurization. I'm more or less sterilizing them, quote unquote, at atmospheric temp or pressure. So it's a much safer system, and I just a little bit longer run time, but with similar results. So I'm just trying to make a happy home for my final culture, because I want a monoculture. I don't want everything else out there.
Yes. And so that's where, if you don't do that, that's where you get your green.
The green and the black pen molds and the lipstick mold and all the other nasty stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's, I would say that you probably, if you didn't go through those steps and all of that, your setup would be a lot like mine on the cricket farm, where I say, I have created an environment that is conducive to insect rearing. And I don't really get to choose which insect decides that it likes to be here.
Right.
And for me, like, I don't have that option of sterilizing out, you know, the things that I don't want. So I have, I mean, I know spiders are not insects, they're arachnids, but I have lots of spiders, but I always tell people that if I was a spider, I would hang out in a cricket barn too. It's
right, there's plenty of food there.
All you can eat buffet.
Right.
But we'll get like various kinds of beetles, you know, you'll get depending on.
Do you have like a different insect sieve when you sieve them out? Or?
No, so generally speaking, they like, the beetles don't like to live where the crickets
I'm sorry,
like
it's
to
a
live.
side question.
No, it's a good
kind
question. It's a good question. So like the beetles don't necessarily like to live where the crickets live. Spiders live elsewhere. Like sure, you get some that are not where they're not supposed to be, kind of thing. But like that's agriculture.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of similarities between crickets and mushrooms.
There is. I mean, I'm not raising animals, but it is a crop that definitely needs tender loving care.
Yeah.
It needs attention to, and without my hand, it will fail quickly.
Right. So, and there's another thing that you said earlier that I wanted to circle back to, was you were talking about how mushrooms are very plant-like and animal-like. Like they kind of have both characteristics and qualities. So can you kind of expand on that a little bit? Because I think oftentimes, and maybe I'm incorrect on this, but there's probably some people out there that think like mushrooms are plants.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tons of misconceptions with fungi. So they are in their own family, fungi, and again, I think they have a lot more similarities to animals than they do to plants. So the fact that they generate their own metabolic heat, they intake oxygen and exhale CO2. But they are phototropic too, so not all of them are, but a lot of them, like the mushrooms that I grow on, I keep my lights on. Phototropic meaning they respond to light. I keep my lights on 24/7, so if you don't, you'll get like mushrooms stretching for the light. Yeah, and I also use that same principle too for carbon dioxide buildup. So like with my pyopene, I want these long, elongated, nice stretched stems. So I will keep that top of that bag on and just slit a very narrow bit of that top of that bag. So there's very little gas exchange and they stretch and I get a really nice looking long mushroom.
Interesting. So then it would not be ideal to combine a cricket farm with a mushroom farm because you just have CO2.
Oh yeah, no. I'm constantly dumping fresh air and it's going right out. I would love to be able to recirculate that air, especially after I work so hard to cool it down in the summertime, but it's laden with carbon dioxide and I can't scrub that out. Or can you?
Well, so I just have this, I know it's not a realistic thing at all, but I just have this like weird, I don't know, I call it like a moonshot sort of experiment thing of like combining a greenhouse with
I thought of something like that, right?
Saying? Like things that especially here in Iowa, you know, like greenhouses during the winter, they have to pump in CO2. Like,
right. And there's actually a whole, I don't know if there still is, but like in the cannabis industry of selling these myceliated bags that they hang in grows because they're putting out carbon dioxide and easy to maintain. You don't need an animal or something like that breathing. Right.
So scientifically that would work then, is what you're telling me. If my theory is possibly correct. Shoot, we're on.
You could grow plants and crickets side by side.
Well, and it's not even necessarily that. I just justified and wrote off my houseplant obsession last January of sticking a bunch of houseplants in my cricket barn during the winter.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, well, because we talked about having ventilation problems in the winter. I was like,
let's try this.
what's it gonna hurt? Stick some
Right.
plants in here. It's
Sure.
gonna make me happy to water them and take care of them. I'm sure
They do okay in there?
They do great. They,
Yeah.
You know, it's high humidity. I put
Mhm.
tropicals in there, so like
Sure.
philodendrons and stuff like that. And so yeah, they really thrive.
Mhm.
But
But it's not probably doing anything it's negligible.
negligible.
Mhm.
I think that, and I don't have the calculation on it, but somebody was basically like, you would essentially need like a rainforest of
Right.
plants in there to make any sort of impact. But you know what? It made me happy to try it. So
Sure, and it brightens up your grow. You got some plants in there.
exactly. Gotcha. Interesting. Okay, so you do you're 9 years into markets now. 8 years soon to start your 9th season, somewhere like that.
Don't ask me to do math.
It's fine.
Come
Yeah,
on.
I know we already talked about that. So it's only just not the math.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talk to me a little bit about the farmers market scene. What do you love? What do you hate?
I love it. It's so much fun. And again, when you're not doing a million farmers markets a week, so I only do one farmers market a week, and I really love the interaction with customers. I love being able to find a home for my mushrooms on the weekend. That's always, when it comes down to it, I gotta find homes for them.
Well, so, and in that vein though, like, what's you stick your block in there and want it to fruit. First of all, how long does it take to fruit generally?
You're asking a loaded question. So I'm growing more than one species, so they all have their own parameters.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think I know where you're going with this.
Yes, but pick one. Like, let's say your oyster.
So there again, why I've chosen oyster in the beginning, and I've stuck with it too, is because it's such a reliable, quick producer. I can have finished product turned around from the time that I make that block, bring it to cool it down, inoculate it, put it in incubation, and fruit it. 4 or 5 weeks to have finished product.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly fast as far as anybody raising a crop. It's pretty dang fast. But then you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, like a shiitake, again, strain dependent, but anywhere from 90 to 110 days.
Really?
Right. So like people are like, why don't you grow more shiitakes? I need a damn warehouse. And more than anything, now I've got the incubation space because I've doubled it. I don't have the fruiting space.
Yeah.
So.
And so how long do they incubate before you move them into the fruiting?
So, shoot.
Again,
like with oyster mushrooms, you're looking right around 11 to 13, 14 days.
Okay. What's the difference in the conditions between incubating and fruiting? Sorry, forgive my ignorance on this.
No. Incubation is really pretty darn simple. I'm just keeping those cultures at room temperature and just letting them sit on a rack and more or less do their thing. So at this point, I've taken my cultures from my grain spawn, I've cooled those blocks off that are cooked, and then I introduce my grain spawn to those blocks, seal them up, bring them over to incubation, shake, mix them up, rack them. And at that point, those little bits of grain spawn are all points of inoculation, and they'll grow out and radiate from those points. And I'm basically just waiting until that block is fully colonized, and at that point, then I'll initiate fruiting. So I can see nice, clean, healthy tissues run through the bag. And again, depending on the species, but for a lot of them, I will just simply make a cut across the face of that bag. And that introduction of fresh air, the drop in temperature going from incubation room temperature to 55, and then also the actual physical disturbance of that tissue will all help cue to fruit. And at that site also, because I don't want fruiting around the side of the bag where it's unharvestable. And so I want it at a very localized spot so I can make it easy to harvest.
Okay, so you get it to your past your incubation, you're into your fruiting chamber there with your oyster mushrooms. You're 4 or 5 weeks into it. You get these nice, beautiful mushrooms. How long before you need to find them a new home?
Yesterday.
Okay. All right, so there's no shelf life in this.
No, there's as far as mushrooms go, my mushrooms have decent shelf life because I'm picking them on the younger side and storing them right away in cold storage, which is really crucial. But still, I don't have shelf life on my product. I'm constantly rotating out. I'm harvesting every day, and I have sales 6 days out of the week. The only day that I'm not selling stuff is Sunday. Well, hell, even then, yeah. So
The right buyer
six,
comes in.
yes, no, and I forgot I got prudent produce, so that I make a drop off there. So yes, 6 to 7 days a week I'm making sales, and it's constantly a lot of hustling. And that's because I'm in the fresh mushroom industry. But that's what this business has taught me also, is that there's an amazing amount of diversification that can be going on and value-added products, and I can go so many different routes with this thing.
Yeah.
So fruiting fresh mushrooms might not always necessarily be my thing. But for now it is, and it's paying the bills, and I like what I'm doing.
Right. Okay. So once you have a fruiting body, then it is time. It's past time, essentially. You said there that you pick them young.
Mm-hmm.
Is it kind of like, veal versus a steer? Like, are they just better quality?
Yes, so there's multiple reasons, again, why I do personally, and I've seen other growers that don't, because they're looking for that ultimate yield. And with that grown out, over mature, gross mushrooms, what you gain in yield, you lose in shelf life, flavor and texture, and handling. You got to think about all those things. So I'm not necessarily the last person that's going to be touching these mushrooms. So I want it to be pristine and young. So a young mushroom is denser, better flavor, tender more, and they really hold up to handling and just lasting longer.
Yeah.
So yes, in my professional opinion, a younger mushroom is always a better mushroom.
Right. So then after you have harvested them and moved them into cold storage, what's your typical shelf life for that? So like, let's say that you harvest them and then take them to Wheatsfield.
Oh, sure. So
like, how long will they last?
get customers ask me that all the time too, because again, I'm turning over products so quickly that I'm not sitting on it. You're going to get more shelf life out of it. So fresh is best, of course, but usually about a week or so in the fridge. If you put them like in a paper bag, they'll start to dry. Up to 2 weeks or so if you put them in a dry Tupperware with a paper towel. But that's about the upper limit. Of like oysters, like shiitakes will last for weeks and weeks, which it just depends on the mushroom. It really does.
Gotcha. And so then you, as you're looking at and planning out your future sales, because like you said, some of those you got to plan out up to 120 freaking days ahead,
Right?
which is difficult.
I keep everything in weekly production besides those shiitakes. So that's how I maintain having chestnut, jalapeno, all these other mushrooms that have all different incubation times, is by running those every single week. And so then some of them are really cool, like a chestnut where I can produce 30 blocks, but only use 15 that week and 15 the next week, because I can get them to hold over.
Okay, and you just get them to hold over in incubation? Or
Keep them in incubation, just as long as I don't have big temperature swings and lights being kept on.
Yeah.
Which again, oh my God, which can be a nightmare. I screwed around with my thermostat, and I have potentially 3-4 months worth of shiitakes that are like starting to prematurely pin in the bag, and just like, whatever, I'll just deal with it when I get to them.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say mushroom farming, then, just as you have described it and laid it out, especially fresh mushrooms, as you're in, as you said, I would say it is much more related to animals than produce style, other traditional produce things. You don't really have an off season.
No.
So I imagine that you have a lot of the same feelings of being tied to your farm and burnout associated, and hey, what way can we do this that makes this a lot easier on me?
Right. That is kind of been the burning question for the last couple of years, is how can I delegate better? And I want to get to that place, I guess financially, where I can say, hey, I can afford. And right now, I mean, I have been bringing on a couple guys, but I'm still doing everything right myself. And it's also kind of me, not a control freak, but I know how things need to get done and how they should be done. And it's hard to find people. Like I had one guy who was with me for 2 years and he went and got a real job, and I miss him. I miss you, Finn. Dang it.
Yeah, when you find a good one, you gotta do everything you can to.
I did.
Hold on to. I know.
I tried.
I know.
I couldn't compete.
I get it. I also lost one similarly. But so then, I gotta imagine you're sort of similar to me in the respect of it's kind of a scale question of like, for me with the crickets, I think I would need to be 3 or 4 times bigger to justify having, 1 to 2 employees. Like it's one thing right now, the size that I'm at, yes, I can hire somebody and take care of all that side, and I can teach them how to do it. I'm not really worried about that.
Right. Not like I used to be. Just like you said, I'm not worried about the other people starting up with it. I know what it is.
Yes.
I know what it takes.
And so, but I'm saying like, for me, my size right now, my scale, getting an employee in there, I can't, a really high quality employee.
Of really high quality, really afford to pay their health insurance.
I don't have enough hours at this scale.
And hours too.
Yes, I don't have enough hours to be able to justify
that's exactly
that.
What it is.
And yes, and so like I said, if I'm 3 or 4 times bigger, there's more hours, there's more like all
more
the
money,
things.
more problems.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's
so
why
we're kind of in that sweet spot, where I could. That's definitely something I've thought about too, because I'm bringing more in, then I have to worry about this product that has a short shelf life. Where I'm going to find a home for that too.
Yeah.
But there again, like, there's so much room for potential. I'm not exactly sure which way I'm going to pivot, but I know that I won't be doing this exact thing forever, and I can't maintain this exact style or level of work that I'm doing. So vacation would be nice.
And it's not that you don't enjoy it, like you do.
Right.
It is a grind though. Anybody who tells you that it's not, like
Liars.
It is they are total liars. Anyone who,
Right.
you don't.
If you love your job, you never work a day in your life. Bullshit.
Yes, stop it.
I love what I do, but you're a liar.
Yeah, you're totally a liar. And also, you don't have to love everything you do. Like, you don't have to. It's okay.
Right.
Like, I think we're also sold that lie of, like, you have to.
And
you have to love your work, and if you
there
don't,
again,
you're doing it
like
wrong.
I had mentioned to you earlier, like at Thanksgiving or Christmas, or everybody wants to ask me like what I do. I don't ask them what they do.
No, well, and the thing is too, like when somebody at Thanksgiving or Christmas or you meet on the street.
It's so novel.
Yes, exactly. So typically, great, I'm an accountant. Cool,
Who
congratulations.
gives a shit? That sounds boring.
Exactly, but if somebody meets you and you're like,
cool, I love mushrooms.
Yeah, I love mushrooms. Like, that's so cool. Tell me more. All the things. Like,
you were asking. I think I probably, like I often do, diverge. You were asking like things that you love and hate about market. And one of the things that it still perplexes me, drives me a little bit kooky, is when people ask me, "Are they poisonous? Are they edible?"
What do you think I'm doing standing here?
Dude, what? Like every time it's a little bit, and I kind of want to be mean, but I'm always professional and nice, but if I can get a jab in, I will.
Yeah, so that's
because that's what I love fucking with my customers. Sometimes it makes market fun.
And quite frankly, like some of them, if you jab, I always say this because I have a tendency to get a little sassy on occasion, and like if you don't appreciate my sass, you're not going to appreciate my brand.
I can only imagine what you did at Iowa State, like the
my
fair, like because you got so many people.
Yes, it's
You got some good ones that like to, right?
The fair is its own
special
adventure.
breed of people.
Yes, it is. It is a very wide swath. I get some people that are super excited to see me.
But your demographic isn't narrow when you're at the Iowa State Fair.
It is not narrow at all, which is fine. Like I think that's also it's a gift and a curse.
Right.
Shall we say? But yeah, I could see where you would run into that same thing of same story about, yes, this is what I do, here's how I do it, like all of that. And don't get me wrong, like I'm grateful for people being interested.
Yeah,
you know, it's,
right.
you have to sometimes remember that like you're not there interested because it's your daily grind, and like it's easy to forget.
You have to be empathetic. You have to put yourself in their shoes, right?
Yes.
And I have learned that too. But there are certain questions too. They're like, "What, dude?"
Like morels? Do you have any morels?
That's you haven't seen my laminated sign that I take with me to farmers market, do you?
No, I haven't.
I point to it now, and it says, "Asking about morels costs $5."
Yeah, there you go.
And it's a great conversation starter. It makes people laugh. I had one guy actually, oh shit, he pulled out his wallet and I was like, "No, dude, buy some mushrooms out here."
Joking.
Right.
So that was, I started, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, I started putting out a sign. Mine's not laminated. Mine was just written on a chalkboard that said, free samples. Unless you spit it out, then you owe me $1.
Nice.
Same sort of thing. Like it's a great conversation starter. Right. People think it's hilarious, and like you get the random little kid.
But you don't want some asshole coming up and take a sample. Like, disgusting. Like keep it to yourself, or don't take a sample.
Yes,
I don't need it.
Exactly. There's that. But then like you do get like the little kid that like just doesn't like
it. Oh
sure,
yeah,
like,
yeah, they're kids.
Buddy,
they get a pass.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, thank you for trying something new. Don't worry about it.
Like the little grubby 4-year-olds that come up and like want to touch all my mushrooms. I'm like, no, honey. Yeah. But then the adults, I'm like, do you mind? Like, I'm wearing gloves over here. Like, I don't know where the hell you're. I really love when they grab a pack and like.
Oh, jeez.
And like I saw one person like it was fall and I saw that drip on her nose and it touched the cap and I was like,
I guess we're gonna throw that one away.
I'll take that pack out of rotation. Lady, like common sense. Yeah, I guess that's my biggest gripe is common sense. Not everybody has it, but that's what makes the world go round and makes everything interesting.
Common sense and common courtesy. I just sometimes I'm like, who taught you how to interact in this world? And who made you think that was okay?
Right.
But okay, so then as you look forward then to the future, you know, we talked about the grind of it, the burnout that inevitably comes from it.
Any job, but yes, when you're really on your own.
Right. So then as you're looking,
more pronounced.
It is for sure. As you are looking forward then, like what do you see the next 12 months looking like? Is it just going to be more of the same as you plot your next move, or?
Well, I mean, every year I have added on, and every year I've seen an increase in gross sales. And you know, a really good cure to burnout is new projects. God, I love them sometimes. They're so fun. Like, I like to build. I like to like put stuff together, and I like to see new things go into fruition. And yeah, so like if you feel a little bit of burnout and stuff, like get some new cultures or some new mushroom to grow. Or I mean, the wonder's definitely not gone when I walk in there and I see like a beautiful crop. Yeah, you know, like.
That's a good sign.
It is, yeah. The wonder's not completely gone, but there's days like it's Sunday, everybody else is like not working. Why do I have to go do stuff?
Yeah. Well, I have to go do stuff because I chose this path. Dang it. Right. Yeah. Trust me, I get it.
Right. Go out that way.
Yes. So then.
Self-pity.
It's fine. So then, what are you like really? Is there a new project coming up in the next 12 months that you're really excited for? That you can talk about?
You know, last year I spent a fair amount of time and energy increasing. I doubled my incubation space. I doubled my production space and cooking space, and so I've made all the steps to start feeding a second fruiting chamber, and that's what I would like to do is actually see a second fruiting chamber, and they're the hardest, most expensive thing to build and maintain, and so that's why it's been last on the list. But
are they the most labor intense? Like, is your fruiting chamber your most labor intense piece as well?
It is. Well, yeah, that's where finished product actually goes, and where I'm making my money is in that fruiting chamber. And again, people too ask me like, do you have some huge cave or some massive like? No, but my utilities would be a lot lower if I did.
Yeah.
So I have about 1,800 square feet building, and of that fruiting space is just a hair over 200 square feet.
Okay.
So I need a lot of other space to support that growing space. And so that's actually, it's weird how small a fraction that is.
Yeah.
That supports that.
Right.
But
so that's your, hopefully in the next 12 months, getting that.
yeah, it would be really nice to see another fruiting chamber going up. I just don't know the logistics of all behind it because I have to bring all the infrastructure to it. Well, the electric and the water and concrete pads, and if I could just have like electric, water, and concrete pad, I'd start framing it up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like seriously, there's a lot of steps, and like when I moved into our new property too, we had just old, really poorly done electric out to the shop, way underrated. So I've had to upgrade everything. And that's just what it's going to take. It's just a little bit more time and effort. But then there's also some value-added products too that I don't know if I want to holler about, but
you don't have to. That's fine.
I'm really excited about. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Good. Well, I'm glad that you have some things, at least in the chamber, getting ready to be deployed, sort of a situation. And so you said, we had kind of talked about it before we got on hit record. You are doing the Ames market.
Oh yeah.
This summer, right?
It's farmers market, baby.
And
it's the best one in Iowa.
You're an every weekend vendor, right?
Yes.
From May until, is that second week of October?
May to October, yep.
Okay.
6 months of my life, every Saturday.
Yeah, in the heat or the rain or the cold or whatever.
You know what? None of it really bothers me besides the rain.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Is that bad? Like, does that make it way more?
Well, I've got all my other value-added product, and what you maybe don't necessarily read when you spend a lot of money on waterproof labels is that you need like different ink to print it on. Oh my God, this spring I had so many. I was like, these waterproof labels suck. Like, oh, it's the ink, and yeah. So
chalk that up to another learning experience, shall we say, sort of a situation. Well, cool. So if people want to follow along with your adventures, want some mushrooms, want to know where they can go get some mushrooms, that sort of situation, where should they go?
They should reach out to me directly. All my contact info is on Facebook. They can, so a couple different options. Like I said, reach out to the farm directly if you're around and you want to just order a la carte or cases, whatever. I'm pretty flexible. But I also sell through other vendors. So Farm to Folk in Ames, Prudent Produce out of Elkhart, and then Iowa Food Co-op in Des Moines. A lot of them, they offer also home pickup pickup sites and home delivery. Of course, the restaurants, if you can support the 15 to 20 restaurants that I sell to throughout the year, that's always great. And I've got out of the retail after COVID.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
That's
God.
It's
a whole nother ball of wax.
It's an entirely different learning curve and everything else, and pricing structure.
I couldn't keep up with the packaging and the labor also.
Yeah.
When I can sell 6-pound bulk cases and out the door.
Well, why would you even mess with doing it in a smaller portion size and all the headache that goes with it?
Right. And for me, it was a slightly better, price per pound, but like labor-wise and time.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gone. It's gone at that point. And so, if they want to follow your Joygrow on Facebook.
On Facebook, again, I am lacking on the social media front, and it's really just Facebook. That's where I think I have a Reddit, and I tried to put some stuff on there, and I've been struggling with that. Not super savvy. I have an Instagram that I haven't touched in years.
And that one's Joygrow as well. It's all Joygrow, all one word. I think so.
I think that's how well I know my accounts. The Facebook one is.
You don't have an actual standalone website or anything, right?
Nope.
Okay. So
no logo either yet.
That's okay. You don't need one.
Yeah.
You don't need one. It's one of those things.
I have tried, and we won't go into details, but it just has never panned out.
Fair enough. It's fine. It's one of those things.
I want one though someday.
Okay, well, maybe somebody will be listening to this that is like a
Right.
freelancer or something and has a cool idea for the Joygrow logo of the future. I think there's some potential.
I have an idea. I just need someone to freehand draw it.
Okay.
And that's the issue.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I might be able to set someone up with you locally. That might
All
be
right.
a good fit.
I'm down.
Is there anything else that you would like to leave people with?
Eat more mushrooms.
Eat more mushrooms.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, Erin, thank you for sitting down today and chatting with me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
You bet.